I've just finished Sonic Frontiers, a game that I went into very skeptical and didn't have a great first like 10, 15 minutes with, but surprisingly wound up really, really enjoying. And I know coming off the Pokemon review, there's going to be people that are mad that I enjoyed Pokemon. There's going to be people that are mad that I enjoyed Sonic Frontiers. But let's talk about Sonic Frontiers because what I think it does right, I think it does very right. And I think it only missteps in a couple places. I think that it needed a little bit more polish, for sure. I think it needed a little bit more time in the oven just to help get some of the pop in and some of the very slight texture issues that I found in my playthrough covered. I think that some of those sequences, especially Island 4, definitely needed a little bit more time to be worked on. But for the most part, I think this game is really well designed and really fun to play. There's, like I said, just a couple small instances. There's a pinball minigame at one point that is incredibly frustrating because of the way that it's designed. And it's not even that I don't like playing pinball, because I love playing pinball, and I expected to play pinball at some point in Sonic. It's just that they expect you to get a really, really high score, and the pinball is really simple and kind of boring as compared to previous Sonic pinball minigames. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the minigames. We're here to talk about the game itself. And this game has a pretty standard loop, right? It's the zone that you're in is a full like map with map icons and a bunch of different stuff you can do on the island that you're on. And each one of those islands has things you do to go have character stories, either main story or side story. It has Chaos Emeralds to find, it has enemies to take out, and it has puzzles to solve. And their equivalent of towers, although it's not the towers, those we're going to get into those later, their equivalent of towers to solve for map completion, right? But you don't have to do any of those if you don't want to. You say, well, you got to do the cyber worlds to be able to get the keys, to be able to get the Chaos Emeralds. Actually, you can find those keys from defeating enemies or on the map or from fishing. So you don't technically have to do them. And if you complete all 4 challenges on a cyber level, then you get a bunch of keys extra for doing that, which is pretty great. You don't have to engage with anything in this that you don't want to. You can avoid the boss enemies and get gears by fishing, or by fighting enemies, or by finding them hidden in the world using the loot mechanic, which is really cool, by the way, and I had a lot of fun using. You can avoid regular enemy encounters and pick up XP by doing style tricks or by getting it from boxes that you break. You can completely ignore the little guys who I keep wanting to call Koroks, but they're not. They basically are. And not level up your stats at all if you don't want to. Or you can just focus that down and level them up as soon as possible. I gathered a bunch while going for the fishing achievement trophy, I guess, because I'm playing on PlayStation. But the trophy for fishing all of the different types of fish in one hole. And I got all my stuff that way. But I also still went and did the map completion to be able to try out these different things. So, how is the exploration? I think it's pretty good. I think that being able to ignore stuff you don't want to do means if you find something that's really annoying, you can just skip right past it. The maps themselves are fairly interesting. I think map 4 is probably the least interesting, but I like them. I don't love the last map all that much either, but I think the first 3 are very cool. I think that the side story stuff is really solid. I really enjoyed my time with that. And the combat is really fun, actually. One of my biggest annoyances is that the combat is way deeper than it needs to be for most enemies. You're going to kill most enemies well before you're able to utilize most of your combo system, or you're going to be fighting something that has like stages of its health bar, so that right as you're getting into your best combos is when it's going to kick you back to have to interact with the different mechanics again. And that was kind of a shame because I really enjoyed the combat in this game. It's really deep in a way that it doesn't have to be, and was very satisfying for me. I rarely skipped encounters because of how much fun I was having with the combat. Once you get into the phantom rushes and things like that, it is a blast to play around with. And I liked the combat a whole lot more than I got to use it, I guess is the way to put it. Most enemies you're going to kill in one hit, and the later enemies are mostly like parry them and then go for them when they're weak or when they're vulnerable, which is kind of a shame because I think that either that or the shields, right? The shields come up and you got to loop around there to break the shields, and that breaks your combo, and that's not as fun. But the combat itself is really, really enjoyable. I know that I'm kind of all over the place, but this is a really interesting game in that you can kind of engage with it at your pace. You do eventually need to get enough keys to be able to get all the Chaos Emeralds, but you can kind of go around doing whatever you want in the map to do that, right? You need to pick up enough of the tokens, the trophies for each character so that you can get their story stuff done. But you can get those doing basically anything. They drop from enemies. You can get them from fishing. You can get them from puzzles around the map. And the most fun I had in this game was just running around doing stuff. I'd hit a camp of enemies here, and then I'd go and do a map segment here, and then I'd go over there and do a cyber level, and then from there it was, hey, there's a loop here, or there's a bouncer here. I think they're called plungers in Sonic, if memory serves. I don't know why I'm saying bouncer instead of spring, which also would have made sense. That's not the point. There's something to interact with here that leads you to a bunch more stuff. It's you're starting on this and then you're getting a rail that's going to let you grind all the way up to this high point where you can then jump down and hit another spring to go back up and hit some more stuff, or it's going to launch you over to this island over here and let you do stuff over there. And the only thing I think that would have made it more progression wise is if the keys and the gear is carried over between islands. But other than that, this game is really open in a way that I wish more open world games were, right? You go where you want to go and you interact with things at the pace you want to interact with them at. When it comes to the story, yes, you have to go and do specific things in sort of a specific order, but even then, not really, because you can kind of go wherever you want to do that. You can go get the emeralds out of order if you have enough keys. You just eventually will need to talk to the named characters there so that you can get the Chaos Emeralds from their minigames. Those minigames are pretty solid. As always with minigames, your mileage may vary. There are minigames that you're going to love that I didn't, and games that you're going to hate that I loved. But for the most part, the minigames are pretty good. They're all centered around the story in a way that I found really interesting, while also working with the characters in a way that I found really interesting. And some of them are challenging, some of them are really easy, but on the whole, I enjoyed them. But other than that, it's pretty much just you running around the world, and I think that's where Sonic Frontiers really shines, is in that moment-to-moment gameplay, that movement, that seamless transition from combat to explore the world, to running from one side of the map to the other, just for lack of a better phrase, I guess, being Sonic. I know that's the meme because of Spider-Man, right? But that was the best moments in those games, was getting to sling your way around the city as Spider-Man, and that's what really shines here in Sonic Frontiers. It's the, hey, I'm going to jump over this gap, this chasm, and as I'm jumping, I'm going to do a bunch of cool, crazy tricks in midair to get more XP, and right as I'm going to land, I'm going to do a quick double jump so that I land on this rail and grind my way up this rail so that I hit a spring, and from that spring go straight up into a ring that sends me flying forward into the next rail, and it just feels really satisfying. I also really like the way they did fast travel. Once you have all the map unlocked, you're able to fast travel between the different cyber levels, which is fine, but I don't use that because it's way more fun. Every time you unlock a map point, you're able to grind along a new rail that is placed back to the previous map point. So as you get map points, you open up this rail system that carries you all the way across the island to be able to get to different stuff. And I think that's really, really cool. The only real complaint that I have is Chapter 4, Island 4, and the fact that when you're running around in the open world, Sonic feels incredible. But when you move to the 2D sections, can't always get the depth that Sonic is able to move with in the game, and it can lead to you overshooting things. That's not a big problem when you're in the cyber levels or in some of the 2D sections in the regular world, because you have enough tools to be able to get back up pretty quickly. But in Chapter 4, the towers, you'll quickly find yourself falling all the way back down to the bottom because you weren't able to hit anything on the way down, because you're not able to turn the camera because the game's decided you're in a 2D section that still has depth. And that's really frustrating. Chapter 4 was the low point in this game for me, even though story-wise it had some of the cooler moments. which is a shame. It could have been a really cool section if not for those issues holding it back. On the whole, I think that when we're looking at the exploration side of things, this is one of the best designed open worlds in a long time, even though it's also like got bad pop in, but it never loses the frame rate. Again, that's the big thing for me. It's the fact that I can go do anything in basically any order that I super love. And it really endeared this game to me. The other thing that really endeared this game to me are the boss fights. And there'll be some slight boss spoilers here. I'm only going to talk about one of the first regular boss fights and the first Titan fight. I'm not going to spoil any of the rest of them in this section, though after this section we'll talk spoilers, we'll talk stuff there. But specifically, it at first seems like you have to fight the bosses in a specific way. But very quickly, once you start unlocking more abilities, you can kind of fight bosses however you want. There's an early boss called the Tower that is kind of interesting. It has multiple segments that you have to destroy, and you start from the bottom and work your way up, right? But once you've unlocked a couple more abilities, you don't have to start from the bottom and work your way up. You can instead start from the top and take it out immediately. You can jump up and spin dash towards the top. You can jump up off something else and hit it with air blades. You can climb up it and hit the head. There's so many different options, and I love that because it means that I can go into any boss fight and go, okay, how do I want to deal with this? Some of them are a little bit more specific. You have to do specific things first to get their vulnerability open, and then you can wail on them however you want. But I really enjoy the boss fights in this game. And the only thing that's better than the boss fights are the Titan fights. And there's just something about those Titan fights, man. Spoilers for the first one, but getting to fight as Supersonic and getting to take them on while the music plays in the background. Super cool. Absolutely made me just lose my mind when it happened. Didn't expect it, could not have expected it, right? Blew me away, and I absolutely loved it. And each Titan fight after that just continued to follow that trend. I think I still like the first song the most, but the last song's also really, really good. Soundtrack of this game's pretty solid. A lot of it is Breath of the Wild style piano, clearly inspired, right? But it's not a bad thing because you also have your regular Sonic music mixed in, and that first credit song is absolutely beautiful. I will get into story stuff in just a second, but I really enjoyed the music of this game as well. From this point on, there will be spoilers for the story. If you don't want to hear these spoilers, you can come back after you finish the game, or you can just go down to the comment section now, tell me how much you appreciated this review, give it a like and a sub, and then come back later after you played the game. But either way, story. I really like the story of Frontiers. I think that the way that they had Sonic interact with Amy, Knuckles, and Tails is all really good, but even better than that is Sonic's interactions with Sage. And so I want to kind of hit it in a row, right? You have Amy. It's always nice when Amy gets treated as a character and not just a love interest for Sonic. And she does still focus a lot on love here, but it's not her love for Sonic. It's love for others, and decides she wants to go on a journey to be able to show that and to show that to others how important it is in a way that I found really narratively satisfying for Amy as a character. She doesn't get to do a lot in the entire series, right? She's often relegated to a back seat. And so having Amy get to basically go like, hey, yeah, no, this is an important lesson that these ancients are teaching us that everyone needs to know. So I'm going to make sure they do. I was like, yeah, all right. And we get kind of the same thing from Knuckles, right? We don't get a lot of deep interaction from each of these characters, but we get a little bit of really good stuff. And as much as I'd like to have more story with them, and the side story stuff is good, I do wish we'd gotten more, but the stuff we get is pretty good. Knuckles not wanting to give up that piece of ruin because it reminded him of when he met Sonic and Tails was really, really solid. And then also Sonic convincing Knuckles, like, hey, maybe you should, like, leave for a little while. You're always stuck guarding the Master Emerald. Maybe you should, like, go somewhere else for a little while. And Knuckles finally being like, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I should. You know, I guess maybe that's a thing I could do. And then, of course, Tails. Tails in this franchise has always struggled with being Sonic's, like, right hand, being the sidekick, as it were. And sometimes you have Tails taking it well and like settling into that role and choosing to do the best that he can to help Sonic, and sometimes you don't. And here it's Tails blaming himself for not being better, and Sonic having to give him that old pep talk, to buck him up. And I really enjoyed this because I it's not hard to understand where Tails is coming from, right? Sonic's the one always saving the day. Sonic's the one that always the hero. And it's not Tails blaming him for that. It's Tails blaming himself that he's not strong enough to be able to stand with Sonic. And Sonic's always having to put himself out to help him. Absolutely, we've seen that storyline before, right? Especially in the Archie comics. But it just felt really good to have, I don't know, I guess the right phrasing here of just their brotherhood almost be the focus again. I really appreciated that. And then of course Sonic with Sage. Sage is a great character, and I think that when it comes down to it, we don't get enough of her, right? I want more, and my hope is that she comes back after this game. But I really enjoyed what we got of Sage. I think that she's a really fun addition to the cast. I think that, man, her relationship with Eggman and her relationship with Sonic is really solid. Having her see Sonic continue to get up, no matter how bad the corruption starts to hit him, having her constantly trying to find a way to save Eggman, and Eggman telling her how proud of her he is. Old Robotnik, he's not the nicest guy, but he really seems to care about Sage. And it makes that moment at the end where he has to tell her to go fulfill her function so much harder, because he knows he has to do that, but he also knows what's going to happen from it. And it's why that post-credit scene of him choking up at the computer talking to her is so powerful, right? That moment where the stars are falling and he waits for her and then she doesn't come. And then, oh man, I love Eggman in this game. But Sonic just going like, hey, Knuckles, no, don't attack her. She's not actually a bad person. She's working against me and she's trying to hurt me, but she's not actually a bad person. That's so Sonic, right? And that moment later on when he says, so your name's Sage, huh? You could have told me that sooner, right? So many good moments. So many good moments in this game. Sonic is written so well in this game. I could not, every time I got into a new conversation with somebody, I could not wait to hear the snark, but also the heart, right? He's not just snarky jerk Sonic. He's got the heart of the Sonic that I know and love, And I think that kind of permeates every interaction that he has in this game. Sonic Frontiers is weird, and I love the boss fights. I love the Titan fights. I love the exploration. The story's pretty good. I don't think it's great, but it's pretty solid, right? And the characterization is really good. I think we just needed a little bit more of the story, and maybe cut out Island 4 to give us a little bit more of the story. I didn't like Island 4 at all. Did not like those towers. But on the whole, I really enjoyed Sonic Frontiers, and I'm really excited to see what they do next, because this game's fun. And isn't that what games are supposed to be at the end of the day? Let me know in the comment section down below how wrong I am. Or if you enjoyed the game, let me know about that too. And until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum that Sonic Frontiers has to offer.